Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by Fireheart Pictures and viewers like you. Thank you. Storytelling is a powerful tool that can help us understand the past. Tonight, our guests will tell stories through the art of dance and documentary film. I'm so happy you're joining us.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you. And now your host, Dr. Angela Williamson.
The Laguna Woods Village Hula Club is here with me. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Well, before we get started and talk a little bit about how you came together, I want all of you to introduce yourselves. Just right here.
Hi, I'm Eileen.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm Sharon.
I'm Madi.
Nice to meet you all. And you're the person who started it all, Ms. Sharon?
I didn't quite start it all, no, but I've been there the longest of these girls.
Okay.
So 9 years, almost 9 years.
9 years. And why did you decide to join this hula club? And then how did you get these other lovely ladies involved?
Well, the beginning, it's a recreational class, and we had a teacher come in and wanted to teach hula. And so we all joined. There was probably 50 or so of us in the first class. And gradually, broke down a little bit from there. But after a year of classes and learning hulas and then starting to perform, we realized that we needed more than just one night a week of training. So we started the club and invited, all the village residents to join us as well. And so that's how the club got started, mainly for practice. And then eventually we earned money for trips and things like that. So.
Well, there's so much in there that
Yes.
I just want to ask you a lot of questions about. But the first one is when you decided that this needed to be a larger club and you announced it, was it really hard to recruit other people or?
Not really. Most of the people that we initially had in our club came from the class as well. And so that was quite a few people. So we had over 20, 30 people, I think. We had to have 20 for the initial club. And we had about 30, so it was, that's how that all came about. And mainly for the reason for the club was so that we would get the perks of being able to reserve a room for practice and things like that. And so that worked out in our favor.
And that sounds so great. And so, Ms. Madi, how did you decide to be part of this club as well? And because there's more than one club at Laguna Woods.
Oh, yes.
So how do you choose this club versus another club?
Well, when I first moved to Laguna Woods, I looked at all the clubs that were available, and I didn't see the hula club, but and I've been with the club about 6 years. But what I did was I saw we go to like clubhouses and they have flyers for different clubs, and I go, oh, learn hula. I said okay. So I just went to the first few practices, and I thought, wow, I really like this. But this is more than an exercise program. We actually learned, Hawaiian culture. We learned to respect hula. We learned to respect that it's a sacred art. And so it drew me in more and more because I have a love for Hawaiian music for many, many years to begin with. And I love to move, so this was just a perfect for me.
And you do this also, you have events as well. And do you travel or do you do all your events at Laguna Woods?
We have gone to Hawaiian Gardens. They have festivals there for the Polynesian cultural. So we have been asked to perform there as well. So we've done that, and we travel locally. We haven't really traveled anywhere too distant. We did go to Hawaii, but that was purely just for vacation. But we went as a big group, it was wonderful. We had a really great time.
Well, before we go to our break, because when we come back, you're actually going to demonstrate some parts of hula for me and our audience. But you mentioned going to Hawaii and going as a group. I mean, you really do create friends for life by doing this. So tell me, someone can tell me how you feel about that.
Well, going to Hawaii with a group, I mean, first of all, you know, we love dancing hula and learning about it, but then to actually go to Hawaii and be able to go as a group and maybe dance hula on the beach, or, get invited to, certain events there, is just very deeply moving. And I think there's a spiritual aspect to hula as well. Because we have that oneness, the synchronicity that we get when we all try to dance and dance together, and it kind of overcomes any kind of differences that we might have, and especially, we get older women together, we have little squabbles and stuff, but we can smooth them out because we are connected this way.
And I love that. And you're going to help us do that by teaching us just some of the steps. And so hold on, when we come back, I will change into this beautiful skirt and you'll show us some steps. You stay there and come right back with the Laguna Woods Village Hula Club, and we'll learn some of these sacred moves. I'm back with the Laguna Woods Village Hula Club, and you are going to walk away with some fancy moves. Okay, Miss Sharon, start.
Okay, our beginning step would be a kaholo. And instead of doing what most people do like this, we're going to put our left hand over our right side, left side, and then straight out. And then 1, 2, 3, tap. 1, 2, 3, tap. 1, 2, 3, tap. 1, 2, 3, tap. Okay, that's for our basic step. Then another step would be, what is it? A hula. And we just reach our foot out and touch the ground with our toes. Grab the ground with our toes. So right, left, bend your knees, and then try and sway your hips.
That's a lot at one time.
Yes, it is. It takes a while. And then we'll do our basic step again, kaholo. And then what's another step? Ami. We circle counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise.
And then clockwise.
But we keep our hands.
And you can keep your hands, yes. Sometimes we just hold our skirts or whatever the choreography.
And so normally you say people place their hands differently because we cross over, but we should always keep it tight.
Yeah.
Cross, never cross the middle.
No. Step. Heels, lift your heels. Yeah.
Step.
Okay, we'll step, front, and lift your heels. And you don't go up and down, you just lift your heels. So step, tap, and lift.
This is like a 4-point move in a way, right? Wow.
Of course, I shouldn't be looking at my feet because the feet are going to be there anyway.
Let's see if we can combine them.
Okay.
Don't watch me, watch them, okay?
Start with our kaholo. It's much easier when we have music, but that's okay. And then hula.
And knees are always slightly bent?
Yes, always. And then an ami.
It's all about the elegance of it.
Right. And then kaholo.
So we have 1 minute left.
Let's do
add it like a finale. What would we do to end our perfect hula dance?
Okay, let's see, what would we do?
I love that.
This is listen, this is see, or this is speak. And the ocean waves.
I would say ocean. We want to definitely know
Right.
that one. Wow. Well, ladies, this has been beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And there are going to be people who want to actually see you live. So I'm just going to direct them to the Everybody page on Facebook so that they can tell us when they want to come and see you.
Sure.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for the lesson.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. My pleasure. And come back as I talk with Dr. Yuen, president of the Friends of the Chinese American Museum. She joins our conversation to discuss the Chinese Massacre of 1871. Ladies, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for watching KLCS Los Angeles.
Welcome back. Dr. Yuen and Cameron Lee Wong are with me to discuss Buried History, Retracing the Chinese Massacre of 1871, a documentary that aired on KLCS during Asian American Heritage Month. Thank you two for joining me. What an impressive documentary. I not only as a person who's lived here all my life, you taught me so many things new with this documentary. But my question is, and either one of you can answer this, is why do we think that this documentary is so important today?
I think if you look at the big picture of how history is portrayed in the United States, we know that history is told through certain people's eyes, and they certainly were not told through those who are people of color. Not only were you not aware of the 1871 massacres, but I came to the United States as an immigrant at age 5. I landed in Chinatown. I went to school in Chinatown. I grew up, I taught in Chinatown, and later on, I taught Asian American Studies with a focus on Chinese American Studies. And it wasn't until I joined the board of the Chinese American Museum, then a few years later, I found out. And I was so angry. I was just so angry because it's, why didn't I know this? And so as we continue with programming and research and learning more about our buried histories, I'm finding out that it's the same with African Americans, with Mexican Americans, with our indigenous partners, right? And so when all this blew up, we learned about Antioch in Northern California. We learned about the different histories of Chinatowns burning, and we never knew that.
So is this when you decided as a board member that the Chinese American Museum would put together this documentary to educate the next generation? Or how did that come together? How does Cameron get involved?
I think we were so fortunate to have met Cameron and his family, who and his mom has a long history in journalism. And so, and his uncle was, is Michael Wu, who's one of the few leaders, in Chinese American politics in LA. And when we wanted to retell that story, there were so many pieces of it, and it was so complicated. And so we thought we have to have visuals. And that's how we, when Cameron came in and helped us with the documentary.
Well, let's turn it over to Cameron for a second. So Cameron, how do you get all of this information? Because it's just like Dr. Yuen says, it's very complicated, and you get this information and then start telling the story. How did you start that process?
Well, as Gay kind of mentioned, I'm very lucky to have parents who kind of worked in this field already. So like my mom's like a very good writer. She's very good at kind of getting all that information into like a workable form. So that was like really, I'm really grateful for that. So once my mom kind of came up with a script in that form, it was really easy for me to kind of visualize how I wanted it laid out. And I very much kind of saw it as the best way to do it, walking through the actual sites that were where the massacre took place, because that's actually where I was approached about the project, was on a tour of the sites. So I thought that was like a very natural way to show the events that happened and kind of incorporate it in with, as Gay said, kind of the people telling their stories about how they never knew about it, how it affected them when they learned about it, and I think it kind of worked really well together.
It did. I mean, your visuals, along with Dr. Yuen, your uncle, which I didn't know, see, I'm learning things too. Teachers love your uncle, by the way. And I mean, all the other people you brought in as well, those visuals matched their stories perfectly, because as someone who was watching it for the first time, and then I hear the title, I didn't even realize there were several locations, and you were able to merge that in perfectly. So how does a young person with your eye, how do you look at that so that you can explain that to the masses?
I don't know. I think I like to think of myself as just kind of one of everybody else. So I think like, okay, well, how would I want to see it? So I think like the easiest way is I guess I'm kind of like a visual learner a bit, and I like to think the easiest way is just to take them to where it is and say this is where it happened. And I think it was also nice for the images we were able to find. So we have present day where it took place, and then we kind of contrast it with some of what the locations looked like in the past. So I think like just seeing the differences and like seeing and being there while we are hearing about what happened there is just like a very effective way to hear about what happened. Yeah, I think.
And that was the answer I was looking for, so great job there. Now, I already talked to Dr. Yuen about this. Now, before you started production, had you heard of the 1871 Chinese Massacre?
I hadn't heard about it at all, actually. So when I went on the walking tour, that was like my first exposure to it. So I knew nothing going in. Yeah, and I learned about it pretty much that day, and that was I remember just that experience was kind of, it was honestly, I was kind of a little bit confused because I didn't really understand how something so like important to the history of Los Angeles and like the way that it changed it in such a big way, how something that massive in scale could go so long without being talked about. So I remember being very confused and thinking that that needed to change. So that was like a big motivation for me to tell the story, I guess. Yeah.
And that is such a remarkable answer. There's one scene that, as a viewer, I thought was the most empowering for me, and it was very educational. And you did it so well visually, but you also did so well describing it. And it's the ritual of the Chinese burial. And I could literally see with your visuals, but I could feel it with your impassioned description of, not even having a name and how important a name is in the burial there. I mean, I would love to hear more of how this part came together, because I think it's just the most dynamic part of the entire documentary. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, kind of going back to what I was saying, I guess I kind of treat myself as, because I knew nothing going in, I kind of just treated myself as kind of a student in a classroom. Like, I didn't know anything, and Gay obviously knows a lot more about it, so it was just, I basically had her sit down and basically just explain what happened, and I remember just basically letting her tell it, and I was pretty much learning along with her. So I think she did all the work pretty much. I didn't do very much for the interviews. I
You
just
both
set
did
up the
an
cameras.
incredible job. You just did such
To
an incredible job.
Cameron's credit, we didn't have those visuals. And so I did my research and I had my culture to back me up to talk about it, but we didn't have pictures and we didn't have visuals. And Cameron went out and he looked, and if he couldn't find it, I think you found an artist, right, that helped create some of those drawings. And he would say, how does this look? How does this look? And so it was a really collaborative process, not just with the team that was working on the documentary, but all their connections in terms of how they went searching for things to enhance the documentary.
And that's exactly how I felt as well too. I mean, not the story behind it is empowering, especially how you describe it. But when I'm looking at it, which is where all our young people now are visual learners, so to be able to see it, there's no way that they could walk away and not understand the anguish behind it and what happened that day. And there was just, that scene was just so emotional. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. It seems really well done. So your documentary is 30 minutes. I could see it a little bit longer. So how difficult was it for you to edit this documentary with so many enriching interviews down to 30 minutes?
It was tricky. I think, yeah, it could have easily been just like it could have been like an hour of just them talking. There's a lot of really interesting stories and details that we had to cut out, and it was difficult for sure. But I think sometimes it's easier to just, at a certain point, you have to look at it in more of like a logical perspective and just be like, and just think, what are the key elements you need to keep in? And I think we did that. But I think with every movie, there's always, the director always wants like a director's cut, and it always ends up being like twice as long. So could definitely do that if I wanted to.
And that's wonderful, because there just seems like there definitely could be a next installment or making it longer, because there's just so much history that just still needs to be told. So my question to both of you before we end our conversation today, what is next for Cameron as the filmmaker and Dr. Yuen as the board president of the Chinese American Museum? So, yep.
I think generally I'm just a very curious person, so I like learning about everything and anything. So if I see something and I'm curious about it, I could see an interesting story in it. And for me, like that filmmaking is like a very good way to satisfy that, because it's a really good excuse to learn about anything you want. So I think the answer is it could be anything. I don't know.
Okay, so whatever happens next for you, you have to keep us informed so you can come and talk about that, because there's going to be more in your future, and I look forward to seeing how your career evolves. Very well done with this documentary. Thank you, Cameron, for getting behind the lens on this. And Doctor?
For the Chinese American Museum, because we are a history museum that tells the stories so they're not forgotten, the more stories we tell, the more stories we discover that we need to tell. Even where the different sites that Cameron was able to unfold, it just makes sense. You know, when a mob of 500 people are coming after you to lynch and kill you, people scatter. So we always knew that the massacre happened at the footsteps of the museum, but we really didn't know the other significant sites. And just like the slavery stories, when the slaves ran, there were kind people who housed them and protected them. And we found sites where white ranchers and white vineyard people hid the Chinese so they could be safe. And so there's lots of those stories that need to be told.
Dr. Yuen, how can educators take information not only from this documentary, but from the Chinese Massacre of 1871 and teach that to children in the classroom?
So we were fortunate in the past few years. After PBS aired its Asian American series, they also partner with Asian Americans for Advancing Justice to create a set of curriculum material that follows the series that PBS did. And so if they log on to the website of AAAJ, Asian Americans for Advancing Justice, they could find curriculum that parallels that PBS series. Now, at that time, the massacre curriculum was not developed yet, but we did develop curriculum. And so at this point, the teachers can log on to asianamericanedu.org, and they would be able to find teacher materials that specifically speaks to the massacre of 1871. And the other thing we're trying to do also is not just to put a set of curricula into somebody's hands, but we're going to see if we can find funding to do teacher development and teacher training so they'll know how to use the curriculum.
Which is always half the battle, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for that information. And I know that would be the first question we would be asked is, how can we get this curriculum into our classroom? And you've answered that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on this special episode of Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Join us on social media to continue this conversation. Good night and stay well. Hi, I'm Angela Williamson, host of Everybody with Angela Williamson. Thank you for watching KLCS. If you enjoy my show as well as all the other shows here on KLCS, please consider supporting the station. Your support helps keep all your favorite programs available. You can support KLCS by calling 888-998-KLCS or by visiting klcs.org. And again, thank you for watching KLCS PBS.